It's Greg with Walnut Ridge RV. Today we're going to talk about the water compartment on 24 Montana. Most newer Keystone product fifth wheels will have a similar setup to this, so this will kind of carry over into that as well. So starting at the top, you have an outside shower, which has a quick connect garden hose that will go into here. It's usually inside the front storage of your unit when it's picked up, and it just quick connects just like an air hose would. And then you have hot and cold, of course. Going down from the top, you have a winterizing system that you will, essentially, if you just get a garden hose, if you just cut off a standard size garden hose, it has the same end fitting, the 1/2 inch that will screw into here, but the hose a lot of times is way too thick, so it can't, when you put this down into your jug of antifreeze, it won't suck up because it's trying to suck. There's more air in the hose than the pump can pull. So it's typically best to try to find a fitting that will, of course, screw into here, but then you could drop it down to a 3/8 hose. Not 1/2 inch seems to be a little too big. I like to use a 3/8 size hose for this. But what you would do is you'll screw your hose into here, put it in your jug of antifreeze, set it down here on the bottom. Make sure that you have your bypasses on. So if it's in winterized mode like this, you'll want it on. And then if it has a standard tanked water heater, you would have the bypass on, so no water heater, or so no antifreeze could get in there. And then you turn your pump on from the inside, and once you turn on a faucet, it will start sucking from that hose, from the jug of antifreeze, and you can winterize, go to all your faucets that way. Sometimes you have to prime that hose in the pump essentially behind it. So if it's not sucking right away, or when you turn on a faucet, you can kick your low point drains on to get it started right here. But sometimes you'll have to kind of lift the hose up and pour some antifreeze into the hose to get it primed essentially. There is instructions for winterizing and for how to use this entire system, typically stickered to the sidewall in this compartment. Now for normal use, you will want winterize off and the bypass off so you can use your water heater. Now I'm going to leave them on specifically for this unit, but you'll want those both off. And then you have one connection that will do your city water, your tank, your fresh tank, depending on what style of camping you're wanting to do. If you're at a campsite that has a full hookup and you can hook up a hose, you'll stick it straight into here. Make sure that this bottom lever is on Power Fresh. The tank fill Power Fresh is on normal flow. Turn on the hose and go. You have an unlimited water supply, besides what your tanks will hold, of course. But that's all you need to do. Now, if you wanted to fill up the fresh tank, you would hook your hose into here, turn this down to fill, let it run until it will we'll show you just real quick so you know what it looks like down here. Whenever that fresh tank is completely full, you notice on the side of your Montana, you'll have a little cup that looks like this. Water will start pouring out of here. That's where the overflow is. So I just wanted to make sure I showed you that. And underneath where the overflow is typically is the drain. This one is a little bit over there in the center, that white drain right there with the valve on it. So you just open and close that to drain it when you're done. So once the tank is full and you're ready to use it, you want to make sure that you put it back into normal flow. The fill is only for filling the tank. Anytime you're using water, you'll want it on flow, whether it's city water or the pump. You want it on normal flow. So if you're using the tank, just turn your water pump on the inside and it will start to flow. Same way as this, you just have a limited supply of water. Below that is a tank flush for the black tank. So the black tank valve is here. Gray tank, so this is your black tank, which is your toilet. Gray tank here is typically the bathroom, sink, and shower. And then usually on a bigger unit like this, it's going to have a second gray tank, which is typically for the kitchen sink only. A lot of times they put that on the frame. If you look on the side of the unit, typically you'll see a sticker that says gray tank, kind of like that one. It's more than likely on the frame a few feet from where we're standing. Um, always make sure that you are putting them in the right ports. This is a common issue I've seen with a few different brands. Is this is labeled, but this valve here is closer to this down here. So a lot of people think that this is the city water connection. And if you hook into there, turn on the hose and leave, you're going to have a big mess when you get back. So always make sure that you're connected into the city water connection. One way to usually tell is that when you pull it out, if you wanted to, if you pulled the screen that's usually in here, the city water connection will have a check valve, this little button in here, and the black tank flushes usually do not, because they use a check valve in another location. So if you want to use the black tank flush, when you go to dump at the dump site, you'll want to usually always do your black tank first. So you just open that up, let your tank completely dump, and then I like to close it, and then I can do my other two grays, because that water is bathroom sink, kitchen sink water. It's typically cleaner. That'll help flush out your hose. It'll help prevent backwashing. And then once you've done that, if you have time, you can hook up a hose into here, turn it on, and if you're monitoring it and you're standing right here, you can leave the valve closed and let it fill up a little bit, and then pull it again to dump it and to flush it with some clean water. But if you're doing other things, walking around, you typically want to leave the valve open. It's still going to shoot around in there, but that way you don't accidentally leave it for too long or get distracted and have water overflowing in the toilet. Let's see, the next thing in here would be your low point drains. These are not too much you really need to do with them. After you're done camping, since they're easily accessible, you can, if it's just going to go sit parked, you can open these up and let the excess water that's in the lines drain out. At the top, you have a KeyTV controller for the cable and satellite hookups. If you're at a park that has cable, you can hook into the CATV, and then on the back of your TV, it's already connected, and then you just run a channel scan for the cable side. Satellite's a little different. You have a port up here. A lot of people ask what this is for. This blue that's taped up is a coax behind that, and you would essentially, this leads to the roof, and there's a roof mount up there that certain brands of satellite dishes can fit on there, and then all you have to do is you connect it up there, and then it's already down here connected, so you don't have to run a cable all the way down. Now, if you don't want to do the roof mount and you just want to have it on a tripod outside, you can use the satellite port here and just run your own coax cable into that. This has, of course, it has its own solar system, but this is a ZAMP controller. So if you wanted to buy a secondary one that's hooked up here, it just sits out in the sun. But since this unit's, all Keystone units have solar already, I don't think it's really worth going for. Up bottom here unscrews, so you can run up your hoses from the bottom. That way you don't have to have your door open or cracked. And that's it. That's a pretty easy system to use. It gives you all the instructions here on the side. And of course, if you ever have any questions, you can give one of our locations a call and we'll help walk you through it. Okay, so we're going to talk about slide out maintenance on these Montanas specifically. Now, this one slide is a through frame gear driven slide. So if you come underneath, you'll have your two rails that go into the frame on both sides. You'll want to spray these rails every 2 to 3 months with a dry lube. Specifically, be best to use an RV dry lube. Spray that on those rails and let it sit. You don't want to use WD-40 or lithium grease, things like that, because it attracts dirt, and you don't want dirt getting into the gear pack and then back further into the track. So spray those every 2 to 3 months. On no matter what slide system you have, you want to make sure that you're lubing up these rubber seals that go all all the way around. You'll use a slide out rubber seal conditioner. It'll be a foam spray that you can just spray on there, let it sit, and that's going to help keep this rubber pliable. So over time in the sun, it doesn't crack and dry rot and end up causing a leak. So that's the two most important things. That's on every single slide out, no matter what style. The lubing of the underneath is only on this gear driven slide. Now Montana uses two different slides on this model, so we will walk around over here. This slide is the same way, but most bedroom slides on pretty much all your fifth wheels will use a different, obviously they can't use a through frame slide up here, so they will typically use a Schwintek or a cable driven slide. Now most 24s are switching to the cable from bow, the exact slide. These don't require a lot of maintenance besides your rubber seals, of course. And then the lube on these, you could every once in a while spray a dry lube just with a piece of cardboard, just a light shot, and kind of rub it in and then run the slide in. And my biggest thing is to tell people to make sure that where you're at, if you've had it out for a long time, it doesn't hurt to come over here and either just give it a quick wipe off. It goes through a seal here, which will pull most of the dirt and debris off, but you don't want any getting in up and through the pulleys, and which could cause issues like that. So on the Schwintek too, if you do happen to have a Schwintek, the style with the rail here with the track, those don't require lube per Schwintek's manual. You just want to make sure they're clean, seals are lubed, and your sealants and other things like that are on the slide. So slide maintenance is fairly easy. The other maintenance on the units would be your sealants. The most important thing is on RV maintenance is the sealants that are on the roof. Keystone specifically is using Alpha brand sealant on the roof. So you have self-leveling, which is for the flat parts of the roof. You'll want to get up there every month if you can, and look for bubbles or gaps or tears, cracks, anywhere in the sealant that's around all the vents and everything. Make sure that you seal up any areas that could possibly leak, because leaks like that are not usually covered under any type of warranties or extended service plans. Insurance companies will not usually pay for damage caused by leaks like that because they consider that maintenance on the camper itself. So I like to tell everybody to check it as often as you can. For the sides, you'll want to use silicone, 100% silicone on the sides. You just cannot use it on the roof. It will not stick. This is a big area right here I've seen over a long period of time that needs sealed. Is this fascia, this gap right here needs sealed often, and to at least checked, because when this slide goes in, there's a seal. It gets pressure and it pushes out the top here a little bit, so I can break that seal. Water gets in, and then you have a rotten slide floor, and that's not a repair that you definitely don't want to pay for. So make sure you're keeping up on that maintenance there. Sealants, and this area right here is one of my biggest areas on a fifth wheel to seal. This takes a lot of the force and the flex from your truck and traveling, so make sure you seal this gap. And then just look everywhere else, around the doors, around the screw rails all the way down, around lights. Most of the windows they don't use sealant, they just use a seal behind them. Yeah, that's your biggest points that you want to look for as far as sealants go, and the maintenance on the slides. We're going to be talking about the Suburban 10-gallon water heater. This will be the same on most of our 24 Montanas that we carry. This is a standard tanked water heater. It's a 10-gallon electric and propane ran. So with these, they have an anode rod, which is also your drain plug. It's going to look like this. Depending on the time of year you've purchased your unit, it may be installed or it may not. Right now it's winter time, so we have all of these out, so the water heaters are drained. But essentially this is an 1 1/16 socket. You'll thread it into here, and You'll want to be careful when you do this to make sure that you're not cross-threading it, because as you put that in there, the end of the rod wants to pull the threads down a little bit. So you kind of have to lift it up with your fingers as you screw it in. And you should be able to get a good few turns with your fingers before it tightens up like that. So if it tightened up right away, I'd know that I was cross-threaded, and I don't want to go ahead and snug this down. So now that I've got a few turns in there by hand, I'll get my 1 1/16 ratchet. I'll tighten it up nice and snug, and I'd be ready to fill it. Now, depending on the season, again, if the unit is bypassed on a Montana, the valve is in the location usually to the left of the water heater, but it's where all the water hooks up. You'll have one valve that says water heater bypass. You go ahead and turn that on or off, and that will start filling the water heater as long as you have your hose turned on. Come out here, lift up your relief valve. Sometimes they'll stay up, sometimes they have something blocking them, so you have to hold them. And once this tank fills, and it'll take a few minutes, it's a 10-gallon tank. Once it's all the way full, this will start shooting water out of it. That will push the air out, make sure that the tank is full, and then you just go ahead and close it. And now you're ready to camp and use it. Now, this one specifically, all of the controls are on the inside. It's electric and gas, and it'll have a switch on the inside that'll have one electric switch, one gas switch. So depending on how you want to run it, if you're on at a campground, you have full hookup, you might as well run it on electric. But you could also run the gas side if you are going to take a shower, doing some dishes. You have it running on electric. You could also flip the gas on before you do whatever activity, and that way, once the electric side kind of dies down, the gas will kick on and allow it to get hot a little bit quicker. Now, you still have to kind of, once you use it a few times, you'll be able to judge how much water you're going to get out of a 10-gallon water heater. So it's a little bit of a game to kind of test and see how your usage compares. There's not a lot out on the outside that you really have to do once you have the drain plug in and it's full. You have 2 push to reset buttons here. These don't blow a lot, but if for some reason the electric or the gas wasn't ever working, I like to come out here and look at these first. These little buttons will pop out, they're rubber, and then you just push them back in to reset it. And that can happen for a number of reasons. It is fairly rare, but it can happen. You'll want to drain your water heater after you're done using it. If it's going to sit for more than a few days or a week or so, you'll want to drain it. That way the water doesn't get stagnant. It prolongs the life of the anode rod and just overall the water heater itself. So when you go to drain it, you're going to do the opposite of what you did to fill it. You will want to lift up on this pressure relief valve, make sure that it'll blow a bunch of air out of it, and then you can take your 1 1/16 socket and rotate the drain plug out. The big warning is make sure that you lift this up and let the air out. If you don't, you won't forget to do it again, because it is under quite a bit of pressure, and this rod will come flying out and hit you or anybody behind you. You can get soaked with water. So make sure you lift up on the valve before you do that. Take the rod. If you can see, these rods will look corroded. This is this is brand new, so you can already see how it kind of looks, just having one tank ran through it. So these will be roughly coat hanger thin. Once it needs replaced, you'll see it start to become eaten away. Most of the time you can just wire brush it, put it back in, and use it for a few more times. It all depends on how often you use it, how often you drain it, on how you should change these. Some people change them every season because they're fairly cheap, and there's some people that can go a couple years without changing them. So that just depends. Other than that, there's not much out here you need to do. All your controls will be on the inside, clearly marked on your control panel for electric or LP. And that is the standard 6-gallon Suburban water heater. We'll talk about the LP system now on our 24 Montana. If you open up your left off door side compartment door, you'll have one 7-gallon LP tank, and then you'll have your regulator. So this is what they call an auto changeover regulator. And what it will do is your other tank on the other side is connected through this hose, and this one's obviously connected to this tank. On the top of the regulator, you have a switchover valve. So whichever tank you want to pull off of first, you'd want the valve in the position of where the hose is. So this one's obviously here, this one's the other side. And if I turn the tank on and the tank was full, this one's not, it will show green, and you'll just run your appliances or whatever you need to do. And you can run it one of two ways. You either leave the other tank off, and then once this goes red or your appliances stop working, you know that, okay, this one's empty and the other tank is still full. I haven't done anything with it. I can rotate that over there, and now I can pull from that tank, take this one off, go get it filled. Or you can use the auto changeover side of it. So you can have this tank on, but also have the other tank on. And then once this tank is empty, it will turn red, but it'll automatically start pulling gas off of the other tank. Now you will want to monitor that if you are running your furnace for a long period of time, or pretty much only your furnace, maybe your water heater, because once this does do its switch over and it's pulling from that tank, if the valve is still pointed at this tank, it will lose a good percentage of the BTUs because it's not switched over. So it'll automatically switch to help prevent things from shutting off, mainly refrigerators when they were more gas powered. You could make sure that it would stay running while you were traveling and things like that. So, but if your furnace, some furnaces will not run if they're on that lower BTU. So if stuff starts kicking off, or you're not getting a high, a good flame at your stove, then you'll want to come in and make sure that you look at this and see if it's red. Then you know, okay, this tank's empty. I need to flip it over to this one because it's drawing off that one. There's no reason. Do not ever put it in the middle. The it's not going to pull from one or the other, or both tanks at the same time. All that's going to do is cause the valve inside to not be one way or the other like it's supposed to be, which can eventually cause a leak. So do not have it in the middle. Always have it one way or the other. And they're pretty simple systems, just like any LP tank for a grill. Open and close. Don't over tighten them. Just give them nice and snug. They have these little straps on them that pop open and then clip shut that you can lock. Because by law, you can't lock the door, but you can lock the strap itself if there is an area of theft. And that's pretty much it. That's the LP system on the 24 Montanas. We're inside our 24 Montana again, and we're going to look at the appliances in this specific unit. Starting at the microwave, this is standard, just like any household microwave. There's nothing too much to know about it. Most of them are convection ovens. It's 110 powered, so it's only going to run when you're plugged in. So not too much you have to worry about on there. You do have fan and light controls on the bottom here that you can use. Have it at low, high, different lighting settings too, which is nice. Moving down to the cooktop, Furrion stoves. Now these have a few different buttons on them that you can use. Far left one is going to be your oven light. And then the far right one does the lighting on the knobs. And now we don't have propane, so it's going to be hard to show you how exactly it lights. Now, if you go with your oven, to light your oven, you're going to turn it to, on top of the knob here, there's a little flame. You'll push and hold that in, and you're going to hear the igniter spark. And then what you're looking for is at the bottom of this bottom tray here is the thermocouple and the gas valve and tube. So you'll see a small spark come up, and then once you've seen that, you can rotate it to a temperature, and then the whole bar, the U shape here, will light up in flame, and you'll be ready to start using the oven from there. So once you do it a couple times, you get the hang of it. It is kind of tricky to show over a video exactly how to do it. Same thing with the top. If we had propane on right now, we could show you. You just turn it. The first spot that will pop up is a flame with high. I just like to push in, hold it, and there's a little igniter sparking back here. And the holding is what's turning the igniter on, but it's also letting the gas through. Keep it held. You'll see a flame pop up. Usually you want to keep it held a second or two after it lights up here, and the flames will stay. And you can turn it to turn it to whatever level that you want. The most common problem, I'd say, with these is that you're not letting the gas get up here. So they can take, especially the oven, if it's been, if it's brand new or if it's set all winter, when you go to run it again, you'll have to kind of purge the gas up to this point. So if you're going to light the oven, a lot of times it's best to go ahead and turn a couple knobs on and get those to light to bring the gas up to this point. So the last major appliance, take out our travel lock here. So last major appliance is the refrigerator. These are household style refrigerators, so they run off 110 power, just like your house refrigerator would. So for going down the road, the Montana specifically uses an inverter. So when you unplug, providing the inverter is on and you have a good battery, the battery will run the inverter, which will then run the 110 power to this fridge specifically. Up here you have fridge buttons, freezer buttons. It's just going to tell you you can set it to what temperature you want, all the way down to -6. And then the recommended settings, wherever you like to keep your refrigerators at. Turbo cool is to, if you want to get it cold faster, you're trying to leave and you want to get it cold before you leave to throw your food in, you could hold that, turn that on, and that's going to help cool it a little bit faster. And water filter, which, yeah, so this one has over here a water dispenser, so the filter's up in the top, but best to read through your manuals on these specific appliances. That way you can get the exact appropriate filters depending on which model it is, if you need to get a new one. But the water dispenser itself, you just push the button, make sure that the hose is underneath the glass, go from there. Freezers, pretty standard, nice deep big freezer, not too much you have to mess with. Now, big thing we get a lot of questions on this specific refrigerator, or the ones with the ice makers or water dispensers, is the water dispenser isn't working after it's either picked up maybe or winterized and whatnot. But these will have bypass valves that are not, they don't show you or easily make accessible. So one of them, if I open this drawer, I guess they did show us a little sticker here now. It says ice maker shutoff valve. And what you do is the drawer itself, if you've never taken a drawer out, you push one side down, and on the other side you lift that side up, or vice versa, depending. There we go. One down, one up. And then give it a little tug to pull it out. And then back behind here will be a valve. And a lot of these aren't open from the factory, because there was since it's kind of hidden, it can be a cause of a leak. But if somebody was to winterize the unit, depending on the company, most of the time they'll shut the bypass and drain it instead of running antifreeze up to that point. So if it's ever not giving you water, then you'll want to check if it doesn't have this specific drawer set up. Typically it is always right to the left of the refrigerator. There's always usually some kind of drawer in this general area that the valve will be behind. And you just take the drawer out, put it back in, make sure your guides are lined up. Now, some Montanas, there's nothing to show you under this one, but some did have a secondary valve for the ice maker underneath the kitchen sink. So I just wanted to double check, make sure it didn't. Put our travel lock back in. You'll definitely want to do that before you go traveling. Make sure the doors don't pop open, especially when the slides actually ran in. You don't want to ding up this nice stainless steel. Okay, we will go to your other appliances over here on your unit. Down here is your standard stereo. These are fairly easy to operate. Bluetooth, and you have A, B, C, which are your speaker controls throughout the unit. Zone A, B, and C. C is usually the outside. B is sometimes the mid or ceiling speakers, and then A will typically be the front speaker. Sometimes they only use A and C, so you just have to kind of play with them and see which one your specific model does. Now, when you push this open, you'll have input ports back here. So it's got an aux, USB, and HDMI in. Fireplace below it, really easy to operate. Like if you have one of these at your house, it's got buttons over here on the right. Power on. You've got a flame button, which is going to change the lighting. Then you have 3 wavy lines, looks like 3 pieces of bacon. That will be the heat itself. So if you turn that on, it's going to give you, you'll hear it kick on, but it'll give you a number, and then you can go through. And if you go through and pick which temperature you'd like it, and they heat up pretty well. These are nice to have on not so cold days. You don't want to run the furnace. You have a timer too, so you can set it from an hour to 8 hours. That's not much to it. It's electric, so you don't have to use any propane or anything else to heat the unit. I'm on the wrong side here. Now these have a hidden TV. Whoops. Hidden TV compartment. Make sure you travel with this down, just because of the mount that it sits on. TVs, smart TV. There's not too much to show you about that. It's just going to be like most TVs in your home. Anything else in here to show you? The only other thing I can really show you would be on this model specifically, it has this JBL subwoofer down here, and inside this cabinet, it's hard to see, but where that blue light is, that's a small rotating knob that will turn that subwoofer on and off. So depending on what you're, if you want that on or off, you're just listening to some light music, you can leave it off. But if you want to, vibrate the floors a little bit, you can turn that one on. that's pretty much it for the appliance side of these Montanas. So we'll move on to the next item. So we'll start at the top. Depending on your model of Montana, it may have this inverter control up here. So this one right now is throwing an EO1 code, which I don't have a battery on this specific unit. But essentially, with this on, if I wasn't plugged in, when I turn that on, it's going to then take the battery power and convert it over to 110 power, so it will run the refrigerator. On a lot of Montanas, that's about all they do. Sometimes they will do the outlets that are marked in the unit, which are a lot of times in the bedroom, and then some up around the kitchen area. So it just depends on your specific model, but most of them will do the refrigerator only. Next would be a couple toggle switches. They just do random lights in the unit. You have a fan here that you can turn on and off. That's up on the ceiling up there. So you can turn the speed up. You can have it reverse in and out. Just depends on what specifically you're wanting. Ceiling fan over there in the living room. Go ahead and shut that off. Down on the control panel itself, you're going to have a few buttons here that are going to tell you the levels and your tanks underneath that we talked about on the water compartment video. So gray 2 is always usually your kitchen sink. Gray 1 is your bathroom sink and shower. Black 2 is optional for this specific model. It doesn't have a second toilet. Black 1 is the toilet. You have battery, and then fresh tank would be your drinking water tank that you fill up and run from your water pump. With these, you always want to make sure that you are cleaning the tanks, especially the black tank, as often as you can. If you could do it every time you dumped it, that'd be best. To run the sewer flush, fill it up with chemicals, fill up with water, add chemicals, let it sit, and then dump it again. You want to keep up the maintenance on that tank as much as possible to, first off, get accurate readings on here. It doesn't take much for anything to be on the little sensors inside the tank to throw these readings off. A lot of times you'll go dump the black tank, you know it's empty, but it's still reading 2/3, typically because something is stuck on the sensor inside the tank. You can also get that with the gray ones, the gray tanks. A lot of times all those just take is to dump it and leave the valve open and the cap off overnight to let it air out in there. And a lot of times that'll stop that sensor from showing. Down below you have your gas and electric water heater. So the water heater only has one electric button. Some have two. One on the water heater itself, but this one specifically only has one. So you have gas. If you want to run it on LP, flip it on. It will light, and this light here will go off once it lights. So it's a fault light, but it automatically comes on and goes off once it lights, not the way you would think. So electric, there's no lights for that. I can't turn it on because it is empty, but it's going to do the same thing. There is no fault light. Turn it on, give it about 45 minutes to an hour, especially with a 10-gallon, and go outside. You could feel the pressure relief valve and make sure that it's hot, and then you'll have hot water that way. Can run both at the same time, like I explained on our water heater video if you need to, and you want to run to get a little bit extra hot water in your showers, you can do that. The unit has tank heaters on it for the fresh black and gray tanks. So if you are out camping, you get caught in some colder weather, and you have water in your tanks, you can go ahead and flip those on, and that will just warm up the bottom of the tank. That's all it's going to do. It's not does not mean that you can take this and camp in 0-degree weather, full hookup and everything. This is just more of a precaution or light water in the tank to help keep that from freezing over. These are all lights here: porch lights, cap lights, safety lights outside. You have awning lights, floodlight for the other side, interior ceiling lights, and then your slide rooms. You may have 4, you may have 5, you may only have 2. So it just depends on your model. Most of them are going to be one button for one slide. It depends on the mechanism that they use. Sometimes they use 2 or 3 mechanisms per unit. So that slide there is a standard through frame gear driven slide. The ones in the bedrooms a lot of times are either Schwintek slides or cable driven slides. Schwintek, you'll know they have the rails on the outside with the teeth, cables, obviously cables. So Schwintex, you always want to make sure that you're running the slide all the way in or all the way out. Once it's all the way in or all the way out, you want to make sure that you hold the button for a few seconds after. That way, make sure it syncs up correctly and doesn't get out of track. Always make sure, especially models like this, that the cabinet doors back there did not happen to come open in transit, or you make sure that you shut them before you shut the slides, or the cabinet doors will probably not be there after you get done. So slides are a little bit different. We'll talk about the maintenance on the slides and the specific style of slides once we go outside here. So that is pretty much it for the Montana control panel. We're going to talk about your furnace and air conditioner in the 24 Montana. So this uses an Excel thermostat. You have 3 buttons, fairly easy to use. It's a little difficult to see maybe on camera, but right now it's in off mode. It's going to show the temperature inside the unit. And as you scroll through the bottom long button, you'll go through 3 or 4 different modes. You have fan, which will run the fan in the AC, high or low. Cool, high or low, or auto. I typically like to leave it in high, high auto if it's when it's really hot outside, so make sure it's cycling fast enough. And you just cycle through and get to what level you want. Now this one has heat electric. It'll pop up here and say heat elect. That is a heat pump built into the AC shroud, or into the AC itself. So what that will do is once I kick that on, it will fire the AC side up and it will just warm the air coming out of it. That's not going to do as well as a furnace. It's, in fact, what it will do is, it was 69 degrees in here and I have it set at 70. That will kick on, and that will only kick on the heat pump, but because it's such a small degree difference. Now if I cranked it up and I had it on, I don't know what the threshold's going to be here, but 78 there, now you can see it flipped over and added gas into the mix because it knows that it can't get it to 78 or whatever you set it to on just the electric heat pump alone. So it needs to kick the gas in to help it get it to that point, and then it can let the electric side maintain that. Now, it's not going to maintain it forever. More likely that gas is going to kick back and forth. So it just depends on if you're low on gas or LP and you can't get, you don't have easily access to refill your tanks, and it is cold, you could use that option. So you're using the electric side as much as possible to help give the gas side a break. But if not, you can just go to your next mode and use heat gas only, and it'll shut the heat pump off and just run the floor furnace. And the only other thing is maintenance on the furnace itself. You want to blow out with an air gun every once in a while the return air outside. The AC, you'll want to, especially this new model, if you want to walk back here real fast, I'll show you up here. This Coleman specific filter, it's just got 2 little screw. You pop those down, and that filter is more like a household furnace filter, and they're very, they pick up quite a bit out of the air. So they're not ones like most ACs used to be, where you could just blow it out, wring it out, rinse it out, whatever, and stick it back up there. With those, you do want to make sure you replace them. Of course, you can get them at any automotive, or not any automotive, any RV store. They will have those for you, or can get them. You can also, believe, get them on Amazon and places like that. But you'll have to change that out depending on how much you use the unit and how often. If you have dogs that shed a lot, smokers and things like that, it will clog the filter up really quickly compared to what you're probably used to if you're a prior RV owner, and that will affect the cooling during the summer. So I'd have a couple of those on hand. A lot of times you have to replace them almost once a month, or at least once every 2 months, as much as they do pull out of the air. So they get dirty very quickly. So keep an eye on that, and that's the biggest part of maintenance on an air conditioner itself. So